and without another word Hale held the door. But the frightened mayor inside let the prisoner out at once on bond, and Hale, combining law and diplomacy, went on the bond. Only a day or two later the mountaineers, who worked at the brick plant with pistols buckled around them, went on strike, and that night shot out the lights and punctured the chromos in their boarding house. Then, armed with sticks, knives, clubs, and pistols, they took a triumphant march through town. That night 2 knives and 2 pistols were whipped out by 2 of them in the same store. One of the Ludlows promptly blew out the light, and astutely got under the counter. When the combatants scrambled outside, he locked the door and crawled out the back window. Next morning the brickyard malcontents marched triumphantly again, and Hale called for volunteers to arrest them. To his disgust, only Logan, McFarland, the Honorable Sam Budd, and 2 or 3 others seemed willing to go. But when the few who would go started, Hale, leading them, looked back, and the whole town seemed to be strung out after him. Below the hill he saw the mountaineers drawn up in 2 bodies for battle, and as he led his followers towards them, the Hoosier owner of the plant rode out at a gallop, waving his hands, and apparently beside himself with anxiety and terror. "Don't!" he shouted. "Somebody'll get killed. Wait! They'll give up." So Hale halted, and the Hoosier rode back. After a short parley, he came back to Hale to say that the strikers would give up, but when Logan started again, they broke and ran, and only 3 or 4 were captured. The Hoosier was delirious over his troubles, and straightway closed his plant. "See," said Hale in disgust, "we got to do something now." "We have," said the lawyers, and that night on Hale's porch the 3, with the Honorable Sam Budd, pondered the problem. They could not build a town without law and order. They could not have law and order without taking part themselves, and even then they plainly would have had their hands full. And so that night, on the tiny porch of the little cottage that was Hale's sleeping room and office, with the creaking of the one wheel of their one industry, the old grist mill, making patient music through the rhododendron darkness that hid the steep bank of the stream, the 3 pioneers forged their plan. There had been gentlemen regulators aplenty, vigilance committees of gentlemen, and the Ku Klux Klan had been originally composed of gentlemen, as they all knew, but they meant to hew to the strict line of town ordinance and common law, and do the rough everyday work of the common policeman. So volunteer policemen they would be, and in order to extend their authority as much as possible, as county policemen they would be enrolled. Each man would purchase his own Winchester, pistol, billy, badge, and a whistle to call for help, and they would begin drilling and target shooting at once. The Honorable Sam shook his head dubiously. "The natives won't understand." "We can't help that," said Hale. "I know. I'm with you." Hale was made captain, Logan first lieutenant, McFarland second, and the Honorable Sam third. 2 rules Logan, who, too, knew the mountaineer well, suggested as inflexible. One was never to draw a pistol at all unless necessary, never to pretend to draw as a threat or to intimidate, and never to draw unless one meant to shoot if need be. "And the other," added Logan, "always go in force to make an arrest, never alone unless necessary." The Honorable Sam moved his head up and down in hearty approval. "Why is that?" asked Hale. "To save bloodshed," he said. "These fellows we will have to deal with have a pride that is morbid. A mountaineer doesn't like to go home and have to say that one man put him in the calaboose. but he doesn't mind telling that it took several to arrest him. Moreover, he will give in to 2 or 3 men when he would look on the coming of one man as a personal issue and to be met as such." Hale nodded. "Oh, there'll be plenty of chances," Logan added with a smile, "for everyone to go it alone." Again the Hon. Sam nodded grimly. It was plain to him that they would have all they could do, but no one of them dreamed of the far-reaching effect that night's work would bring. They were the vanguard of civilization. Crusaders of 19th century against the benighted of the Middle Ages, said the Hon. Sam, and when Logan and Macfarlan left, he lingered and lit his pipe. "The trouble will be," he said slowly, "that they won't understand our purpose or our methods. They will look on us as a lot of meddlesome furriners who have come in to run their country as we please, when they have been running it as they please for more than 100 years. You see, you mustn't judge them by the standards of today. You must go back to the standards of the Revolution. Practically they are the pioneers of that day, and hardly a bit have they advanced. They are our contemporary ancestors." And then the Hon. Sam, having dropped his vernacular, lounged ponderously into what he was pleased to call his anthropological drool. "You see, mountains isolate people, and the effect of isolation on human life is to crystallize it. Those people over the line have had no navigable rivers, no lakes, no wagon roads, except often the beds of streams. They have been cut off from all communication with the outside world. They are a perfect example of an arrested civilization, and they are the closest link we have with the old world. They were Unionists because of the Revolution, as they were Americans in the beginning because of the spirit of the Covenanter. They lived like the pioneers. The axe and the rifle are still their weapons, and they still have the same fight with nature. This feud business is a matter of clan loyalty that goes back to Scotland. They argue this way: you are my friend or my kinsman, your quarrel is my quarrel, and whoever hits you hits me. If you are in trouble, I must not testify against you. If you are an officer, you must not arrest me. You must send me a kindly request to come into court. If I'm innocent and it's perfectly convenient, why, maybe I'll come. Yes, we're the vanguard of civilization, all right, but I opine we're going to have a hell of a merry time." Hale laughed, but he was to remember those words of the Hon. Samuel Budd. Other members of that vanguard began to drift in now by twos and threes from the bluegrass region of Kentucky and from the tidewater country of Virginia and from New England, strong, bold young men with the spirit of the pioneer and the birth, breeding, and education of gentlemen, and the war between civilization and lawlessness that was the result of isolation and consequent ignorance and idleness started in earnest. "A remarkable array," murmured the Hon. Sam, when he took an inventory one night with Hale. "I'm proud to be among 'em." Many times Hale went over to Lonesome Cove, and with every visit his interest grew steadily in the little girl and in the curious people over there, until he actually began to believe in the Hon. Sam Budd's anthropological theories. In the cabin on Lonesome Cove was a crane swinging in the big stone fireplace, and he saw the old stepmother and June putting the spinning wheel and the loom to actual use. Sometimes he found a cabin of unhewn logs with a puncheon floor, clapboards for shingles, and wooden pin and auger holes for nails. A batten wooden shutter, the logs filled with mud and stones, and holes in the roof for the wind and the rain. Over a pair of buck antlers sometimes lay the long, heavy home made rifle of the backwoodsman.